Welcome back to our science experiments. I'm Melissa and I'm here with the Abbey Community School Society, ready to do our next experiment together. Now remember, before we start, remember our 3 safety rules. Remember not to eat or drink anything during our science experiment. Remember, if you want to smell, make sure you waft. And last but not least, when you're doing your experiment, keep your head away so nothing splashes in your face. Okay, you will notice that our lab today is called Chameleon Cabbage, and that is because we are going to be changing colors using cabbage and different solutions. Now, I have laid out all my supplies that I'll need today, and you should do the same. So we should use a pot, okay, for when we are boiling our cabbage on the stove. You'll also need a stove, which I'm sure you have. We will need a small knife for when we're cutting our cabbage, some cabbage, a sieve, some coffee, some lemon juice, any type of juice. I have orange juice, some dish soap, some milk, some vinegar, some water, and we need a little bit of baking soda. And we're not going to just add our cabbage to these ingredients, so we need to have some clear cups to put our liquids in. So I have 8 clear cups. You also might need a spoon and a funnel, depending on how you're straining your liquid. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so we're ready to start cutting our red cabbage. So to do this, all we need is a small piece of cabbage, something like this. It's about a quarter of a cabbage. Okay, we'll need a paring knife or a small knife. And as you can see, I have already started boiling some water in a pan on the stove for after we cut our cabbage. Okay, so for this part of our experiment, if you are old enough, make sure that you have adult supervision while you're cutting the cabbage with a knife. And if you're still pretty young, you can ask a parent to do this step for you. So a safe way to use a knife to cut vegetables is to make sure that your left hand, or your opposite hand of holding the knife, is holding the cabbage with your fingers away from the knife. Remember, we do not want to cut a finger off today. So make sure your fingers are in line with each other and they're not sticking out away from your hand. And then we just want to cut our cabbage into small pieces so that they'll be able to fit in our pan. All right, so now we are ready to put our cabbage into our boiling water. Make sure that you do this very safely. I am going to use a sieve or a strainer, so I'm going to put my cabbage in the sieve and carefully put it in the pot. Make sure that you boil your cabbage for 10 minutes and then take it off the stove and let it cool down for about 30 minutes before we use it in our experiment. Now we'll let it boil for 10 minutes. All right, so now you should have cooked your cabbage and have let it cool for at least 30 minutes. So I'm going to grab my cooled cabbage. All right. Now when we take our lid off, you'll notice that there's water and still the cabbage. We want to take the cabbage out because for this experiment we will only be using the liquid. So to do that, I'm just going to start scooping the cabbage from the pan onto a plate using a spoon. And when there's not too much left, then I'm going to use my sifter and pour my cabbage liquid through it so that we can get all the remaining little pieces of cabbage out. Okay, so go ahead, you can watch me or do this right now. All right, so now I have just mostly the liquid left. I want to strain out the rest of the cabbage. So for this, you might want to do it over the sink if you think you might spill, or over a tablecloth on your table, just in case you spill. I have a glass container or a cup that you can use. You could also use a bowl or any kind of container to put the liquid in. All right, so I have a little bit of cabbage left in the pan. That's okay because we're not going to be using that for our experiment. We'll just set that off to the side and set our cabbage off to the side as well. All right, so now we have our glass of cabbage water. And what do you notice? What color is it? It's very dark purple, okay? So we are going to use this liquid as our indicator for this experiment. And an indicator will help us tell what the pH is of our different ingredients. So the goal of this experiment is to learn about the pH scale using our cabbage liquid. And what is the pH scale? How can we tell what the pH is based on the color changes that happen? And when do we use pH in the real world, not just in the science class? Okay, so let's get started. We are going to first pour some of our liquids and testing materials into a cup. So they each have their separate cups so we can test all 8 of our materials. So first we're going to line up our cups so we know what we are going to be pouring in them. All right, so let's start off with some orange juice. You could use apple juice or punch, but I have some orange juice today. I'm just going to fill the cup about halfway full. It doesn't need to be full. Right. Now we're going to do some coffee. So for the coffee, we are going to use a spoon, and I left mine with the cabbage. Okay, so we're going to use a spoon and just collect 1 spoonful of coffee grounds and put it in the cup. Then we're going to dissolve that coffee in water. So you can take water from your tap, but I have a water bottle with me. You can fill it about halfway full and then stir to dissolve the coffee. All right. Now for our next liquid, we are going to use milk. Okay. You can use any type of milk. I have 2% with me. Okay. Now we're going to use some vinegar, also known as acetic acid in science. Okay, now for some lemon juice. Okay, you might want to shake your lemon juice bottle to mix it up before you pour it in your cup. Now for our last 2 cups, we are going to put some dish soap into our cup. We want to do 1 or 2 big squirts. Okay, now that soap is really green. We just want to mix water through it so we can get some soapy water. Take our spoon again and pour in some water. Now we're going to mix it up. There we go. We want to make sure that it starts sudsing up. Okay. Now we have a cup of baking soda. And I've already put in 2 scoops of baking soda. So we're going to dissolve it in water. Once again, we want to stir it in. All right, and we also have some water, just plain regular water. So these are a lot of different solutions that we are going to test today. So just to recap, we have our baking soda solution, our soapy water, our lemon juice, our vinegar, some milk, some coffee, orange juice, and water. Now you might ask, why are we testing the pH of these liquids? So in science, when we test for pH, we're actually testing for how many hydrogens are in one material, okay? And based on how many hydrogen molecules are in a solution, tells us if that solution is acidic or basic. Okay? So something that's really acidic, you could think of citrus fruits like lemons and limes and oranges. But something basic, you could think of maybe a baking soda mixture. So the reason why we are going to use red cabbage as an indicator is because it has a pigment inside the red cabbage, which makes it purple, okay, that is called anthocyanin. And anthocyanin changes color when it gets in contact with acids or bases. So when we add our anthocyanin indicator, it will hopefully change our solutions different colors depending on if they're acidic or if they're basic. So we can look at our test tube rack right here. This test tube rack has the colors of the rainbow, but these colors also correspond to what our pH, what our solutions are going to change to. So if we have a really acidic solution, it's going to be red, orange, or yellow. If we have a neutral pH, that's a pH of 7, it'll be some shade of green. And if we have a really basic or alkaline solution, it will look blue or purple, okay, on this side. So the colors of the rainbow also correspond to the changing color of our anthocyanin indicator. So let's give it a try. We're going to add a little bit of our red cabbage liquid to each of our solutions and see if they change color. And hopefully they do change color, and it'll tell us how acidic or how basic the solution is. Okay. All right, so for this, if you have your red cabbage water in a container that has a spout, it'll be easier to pour, maybe like a measuring cup. But if you just have it in a cup or a bowl, then you might just want to use a spoon to spoon some of the liquid into each cup. Okay, so I'm going to, because I have a spout, just pour a little bit of my red cabbage liquid into each of my samples. Now before we start, maybe this is a good time for you to make a hypothesis. Remember, that's a prediction of what you think might happen. So if I add my anthocyanin indicator to the milk, do you think it will become more red, or do you think it will turn more blue? And that depends if you think milk is acidic or if you think it is basic. Okay? Another thing that you might think, what is an acid? Okay, so if we think about our stomach has stomach acid in it, and that acid breaks down our food when we eat it. So when we think of an acid, it's usually really, really strong. Okay? But we have different strengths of acids and bases. So if we have an acid in one of our sample solutions here, it won't be as strong as our stomach acid, right? Because these solutions don't break down our food, but it'll be maybe a less strong acid. Okay? So this test will hopefully tell us whether these liquids are acids or bases. So let's give it a try. And lastly, our water. All right, so if you were just watching me pour in the pigment, you can pause this video and try it for yourself before we continue explaining the science behind the color changes. Okay, so welcome back after your science experiment that you did yourself. Did your solutions change color just like my solutions? If they did, that's really cool. And if they didn't, maybe you were using different types of these juices or these solutions, and that's why maybe it has a different shade of blue or a different shade of red. Okay? So now we can talk about the pH scale. So the pH scale ranges from 0 to 14, okay? With 7 being a pH that is neutral. So when we think of water or liquids and liquid solutions, we think of pH 7 being neutral, and that is water. And usually water will turn some sort of shade of dark green. Okay? So let's look at our water. Let's stir it up. What color is our water? It looks quite blue. That means that this water has a little bit of different minerals in it that have moved the pH of it up a little bit. So it's a little bit more basic than pH 7. So maybe it is 7.5 or something like that. So water generally should be neutral at pH 7, but maybe because of the minerals in this water bottle, they have made it a little bit more basic, which is totally fine. There's usually minerals in our water, and they're still healthy to drink. Okay. So do we remember what this first cup had in it? Remember, this one had orange juice. Now what do you think? Based on the color and based on our rainbow of colors, remember I said that red is more acidic and purple and blue are more basic. So what does our lemon juice look like? It looks orange to me, okay? Orangey red. So we would say this this orange juice is acidic, okay? All right. Now, our coffee is pretty dark. I'm gonna give it a stir and see if we can see any color change. Okay. What did your coffee change color to? Let's see. It looks kind of orangey brown to me. So that would mean that it is a little acidic, okay? But maybe your coffee maybe used a dark roast or light roast. Maybe that changes the pH if it's more acidic or more basic. So check it out when you do it. Now remember what this solution was. This was our milk, and it is no longer white. What color is our milk? I think it has a little bit of blue and purple in there. Okay, that means that on our pH scale, it is not acidic, it's not neutral, it's a little bit basic. Okay, so milk usually has a pH around 8, which means it's on the basic side of our scale. Okay, so this one, do we remember what this one was? That one was vinegar, right? Vinegar is clear, but now it is definitely not clear. What color did your vinegar change to? So we can see that this vinegar looks like it is acidic. Okay, so it probably has a pH of 3 or 4. All right. Now comes our lemon juice. Okay, our lemon juice has changed from yellow to pinky red. Okay, so same thing. It is on the acidic side of our pH scale. Now this is our soapy water. Okay, remember our soap was green, but that doesn't matter. It's what's made up of our soap. Okay, so our soap and water have changed to purple and blue. So that means soapy water is definitely basic. Okay, so it is more basic than just our regular tap water. And lastly, we have our baking soda mixture. And it is a nice blue color, almost like ocean blue. So it's between our green and blue, and that would make it basic. Okay? So it has a basic pH, maybe around pH 8. Okay? Remember, pH 7 is neutral. So you might ask, why are we testing pH today? Well, pH is very important when we are talking about swimming pools. Okay? If you've ever jumped into a swimming pool, in the morning before anybody goes into the pool at the rec center, there are workers that test the pH of the water to make sure that it is safe for you to swim in. Because if it is too acidic, right, if it has a pH of 2, 3, 4, that could sting your eyes and burn your skin. And we wouldn't want that if you're swimming in a pool. So when you hear people testing the pH of your swimming pool, that just means they're trying to make it more neutral for the swimming pool water so that it's safe for you to jump in and it's not going to hurt your eyes. So in the world, there are scientists that test pH on swimming pool water, or when they test blood, or when they test other solutions, and it's really important for them to find out what the correct pH should be so that we can balance out these solutions to keep all of us healthy. So this is one way that we can test our pH, by using our red cabbage indicator. I'm sure there are other ways, and maybe you can research them and think about what other ways could we detect our pH range of these solutions without using red cabbage. Is there something else that we could use? Okay, this brings us to the end of our science experiment today. I hope you learned a lot about pH, and I hope to see you next time.